Alrighty, guys, this is Module 43. Today we're talking about infancy and childhood, specifically physical development. Okay, so in psychology, when we talk about maturation, we're not talking about like, oh, you're so mature. Maturation in this context is the orderly sequence of biological growth. And this sets the course of development while nature adjusts it. So, for example, before a baby can run, it must first be able to walk. And before that, it has to be able to sit up. This is what we call maturation. Now, when the baby is in the uterus and it is developing, their brain is producing massive amounts of neurons, about 250,000 per minute, and this peaks at around 28 weeks. Now, once we're born, we have almost all of the neurons we're going to have. We will have some more later grow, but what is happening is those neural connections are being made, and those are having rapid growth spurts. So this rapid growth spurt will cause a actual increase in the size of the baby's brain within just a couple of days of birth because of those connections. So if you look right here, you can see this is the baby's synaptic connections when they're first born, and it's kind of immature. They're kind of weak. They're not very proliferated. Whereas in 3 months, we see quite some growth. And then by a little over a year old, there's a lot more synaptic connections happening here. So, from birth to a year old, there's a lot of growth and maturation that takes place. Around ages 3 to 6, in that time period, this is when there is the most rapid growth in the frontal lobe, which, if you recall, the frontal lobe is kind of our rational reasoning center, our planning, decision making. So I think it kind of makes sense that during that time is when kids are going to first enter school around age 4 or 5, because they can just start to plan their activities and things like that. But this does require vast amounts of energy. And I think that kind of makes sense why little kids need naps a lot. Their brains are growing so much, they need the rest so that their brain can have that, consolidation, that memory consolidation, because they're learning literally everything. Also, our association areas, so things like our areas of the brain that require or that process thinking, Broca's area, Wernicke's area, those language areas, and memory, those are our last to develop, which is why, again, we think that that's part of the reason why we all have infantile amnesia, because since those are developing last, some of those memories that we formed early on in life are being interfered with, and we just cannot access. And then in puberty, the greatest brain development is happening in the areas that help agility, language, and self-control. They're still growing during that time, though. Now, also at this time, this is when neural pruning is going to take place, which basically means the neurons that are being used are going to be strengthened, like with LTP, but the ones that are not being used are going to be killed. They're going to be cut off, basically, and this is what we call pruning. Now, also, during the, early years of our life, we are developing our motor skills, which means movement. And as infants exercise their muscles and their nervous system, skills start to emerge. Now, motor development sequence is universal, meaning babies always follow this sequence. The timing at which this sequence happens differs, though. That can differ among cultures. But typically, this is what happens. Babies will roll over, then babies will sit up, then they will be able to crawl. Now, some babies don't crawl at all, but then they'll be able to walk and then run. And what's interesting to know is that we know that this isn't just being modeled, because blind babies also do these things. They also crawl before walking. So we know that it's kind of like a set programming that has to take place in these in this sequence. But like I said, babies in different cultures sometimes will have this occur earlier or later than others. Like babies that live in very mobile groups, like nomadic groups, may start walking earlier than babies who don't live in those kinds of cultures. And then our genes really do guide our motor development for the most part. In the US, 25% of babies will walk by 11 months, 50% by 1 year old, and 90% by 15 months. So within a year and a half old, most babies are walking, unless obviously they have some kind of issue. And often identical twins start walking within like a couple of days of each other. So genes definitely are impacted here. And the reason for this, the reason why we're able to walk at this age is because during the first year of our life, our cerebellum is developing rapidly, which allows us to have the motor skills to walk by around a year old. Now, we're going to watch this video in class if we haven't done so already, so I'm going to skip that for now. Now, like I said, we all experience infantile amnesia, which is where we can't recall most of our life before age 4. And like I said, in part, it's because of the late development of the association areas. But though we can't recall consciously those explicit memories, there are definitely implicit memories that we still recall today. I mean, the fact that we're able to walk, that's an implicit memory that we learned as infants. And there was an experiment done because they wanted to know, do babies actually learn things, and do they recognize things? Can they learn and apply things? And they found that yes, they do. They do that. So there was this experiment that they did where there was a baby who was fussy, and when the mom noticed that when the little mobile, that little thing that kind of twists over the crib, was spinning, the baby would calm down. So this mom was a psychologist and goes, okay, well, I'm gonna put a little rope on my baby's foot so that when it kicks its leg, it will spin the mobile. And what they found was that the babies learned to do that. When they had the thing put on their foot, they would kick and it would make the mobile spin. But how do we know that they're not just kicking because they've got a thing on their foot? Because what they did smartly is they brought in a new mobile. And when there was a new mobile placed in front of them, the babies did not kick, which tells us that the babies recognized that this was something new. They didn't recognize this, whereas the other mobile that they had been using before, they did recognize. So there's definitely lots of infant memories being created, even early on. Now I'm going to have you test yourself, and I'll see you later. Bye.